Hey, this is Devin what am I with? I'm with In the No Traveler and The Romantic Traveler and the Mystical Solutions to Modern Love. And this is my first official blab. In case you don't know, I talk about love and relationships and Kabbalah and how to have better love relationships through the use of Kabbalah and other spiritual solutions. What that means is, yes, I will be talking about Kabbalah, both sort of like the traditional style as well as the Western Hermetic tradition, but I might sneak in some Baha'i faith and some Taoism and some other fun things along the way. So welcome, if I'm talking to by myself or not, but we are we're moving forward, and in any event, whether you are with me live or whether or not you are going to see a replay of this on devingallaudet.com, welcome and thank you so much for being here. So anyway, to catch you up to speed, if you're sort of like watching this through Blab, I just finished a 6-week series on sort of relationship deal breakers. The things that we do that are like we're probably doing them unconsciously and slowly but surely putting little wedges in between the people we love and ourself and create space and distance. So we don't want to do that. And so we talked about some of those big mistakes and some of the solutions to them. This week, for the next series of weeks, we're going to do 5 love and relationship saviors, things that you should absolutely be doing in order to find more love and happiness and things like that in your life. Some of this is kind of basic and sort of obvious, and sometimes it's not. So have fun, bear with us. If you think it's a little rudimentary, hang with us, because I think we're going to get a little deep. Matter of fact, I think we're going to start with a little bit of Kabbalah in terms of a lesson. I'm sort of winging this to some degree, not because I don't know the subject, but because I hadn't really planned out a specific thing, but I'm going to kind of do a little bit of talking about this sphere here, which is known as Hod. And by the way, this is the Tree of Life, if you're not familiar with it. It's basically a structure, a glyph that kind of comes from the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, which talks about our relationship to the divine. And when I say divine, I'm talking about God, but I'm also talking about your highest inmost self. If you don't necessarily believe in God, which is totally fine, that's the stuff where you are a devout believer or a non-believer. All I ask is that you try it out. So anyway, this idea of Hod, for the most part, kind of connects to the ideas of intellect and speed and communication. And these are all really wonderful things. And you will find that it is close to the very, very bottom of the tree, sort of like the lowest form of receiving, if you will. It's farther away from the top. And the reason for that is simple. It has to do with my intellect, and it has to do with my reason and my logic and my communication and the way I'm going to talk to you. And so, while this is a wonderful thing and why we need this in our daily life, we also have to understand it is limited. It is sort of a way of separating us, because more often than not, we use our communication to express our point of view without defending the needs of others. That's a separate point. And more importantly, it is one of the things that we use as it's ultimately this is a veil. Hod is a veil, and all of the veils are the components that keep us from our highest self, our divine nature, from God, from the divine spirit, the one source, the universal, the cosmic ooze, the thing that makes the flowers grow, however you want to describe it. But ultimately understand that while communication is valuable and Hod is extremely valuable as part of the human experience, it's also part of the human experience that's kind of a basic thing. perhaps one of the most base. So understand its greatness, and also understand that it is a veil that frequently keeps us between us and our highest and most self. Anyway, so moving on from there, why don't we just jump into the 5 things? Matter of fact, I'm going to shift my cards around just for my own amusement. So the 5 things that the 5 relationships, 5 relationship saviors. First one, I stole this, actually not the word or the concept, but I stole this use of index cards. Responsibility, it's a big, long word. When I'm talking about it, I'm not talking about getting to work on time, although you should get to work on time and take care of the things that you are supposed to. But when I'm talking about responsibility, I'm talking about the responsibilities within the confines of your love relationship. So responsibility deals with the ideas of consistency. That means, let's say in your love relationship, if it's part of your job or part of your relationship to take out the trash once a week or pay for bills or do things like that, responsibility, your aim is to provide a safety net for the other person. In other words, when you are expected to do something, do it. The responsibility will be part of a major part of the glue that keeps the two of you together. When the other person gets into a habit of knowing that you will be there and do the things that you say you're going to do, that will give them a sense of security, which ultimately, the more security that they have within the relationship and the love that they have for you, the better. Next, honesty. Honesty, tell the truth. It's also more about honesty, not when it's convenient, but when it's not convenient, when it's scary, when you think you may be saying something that might be threatening to the other person, but also to you, which sort of an annex of honesty is that sometimes people use honesty as a weapon. In other words, well, I need to be brutally honest with you. And really, it's an opportunity, or they may use that opportunity as something to hurt the other person or to use words against the other person, even if it's true. The kind of honesty that I'm talking about here is something that is done with compassion. That means that when you're having hard conversations within your relationship or any relationship, it behooves you to be honest, but to serve that with a dose of compassion. So next on the list, acceptance. Oh, and if you haven't figured it out, this is going to be sort of an overview. We're going to get into each subject a little bit more in depth. This is going to be sort of like our top 5. But I mean, truthfully, there's so many things you can do well in a relationship. I may be able to do this far, far beyond 5, but I think we're going to stop with these 5 as necessary. So acceptance, what do we mean by acceptance? That means we accept everything. That means, again, a lot of the stuff that we talk about and a lot of the problems that we create in a relationship have to do with how easy it is for us. In other words, we find our partner beautiful, so it's easy to love their beauty. But then when we get into their humanity and their frailties and their imperfections and all that other stuff, sometimes it's easy to ignore the beauty, inner and outer. So when we're talking about acceptance, we're talking about the stuff that is hard to accept. Just in my own relationship, I love my wife to pieces. We have a great, great relationship. Does she do things that annoys me? Do I do things that annoy her? Like probably by the truckloads. But the agreement that we have is that we use tools, in terms of within our love so that we can kind of continue to do the right thing for each other. So when we're talking about accepting, we're talking about acceptance. When it is inconvenient, we choose to accept things about we just have to understand we're all, in terms of Kabbalah, we're all striving to kind of be our highest selves, to move closer to the divine, to work the best that we can. And we understand that everybody else is doing the same thing as well. We accept that part of what we're doing is part of a larger process. So the next thing on our list, which we talked a little bit earlier about, is communication. Communication is wonderful. It's how we get our feelings known. It's how we speak to one another. It's how we bandy back and forth ideas. But what it also means is that we have to express ourselves. That means if somebody's stepping on my toe, I have to say things like, and that happens all the time when you're living with somebody, when you love somebody. Your heart is in their hand. And when that happens, it's very easy to say, well, I'm not going to say anything now. I don't want to hurt their feelings, or I don't want to push them away. You're actually doing the opposite. What most people do when they're when they're not communicating with their person, they'll get fed up until it becomes something ridiculous. So you don't want to have to wait for that to happen. Ask for what it is that you need so you can feel safe and secure within your relationship. All of this leads to a great word, one of my favorite words. It is service. Service, the way I define it, is actually an act of love. As my friend Dave says all the time, love is an action, and that action is service. What do I mean by service? I mean that this is where you put the needs of somebody else before your own, even if you don't like the response. Sometimes we have to take and make hard choices in order to be of service to somebody else. And when we do that, two things happen. A, that person who is receiving your service probably feels safer and more secure, but more importantly, it is part of the act of limitation or restriction, or doing the opposite of what makes sense to you in sort of like a capitalistic mindset. We'll get more into those ideas in the future. But from now, understand that there's a big difference between saying I love you with a desire, really, like I'm saying I'm doing this thing to love you, mostly because I'm getting something out of it. This is the real love comes when you are doing something purely to be of love and support to that other person. So, let's focus on that, and then finally, how do you do these really hard? Okay, I'm going to give you two words that we're going to talk a lot about. Like, how do we do this? Like in practical things, something happens where I don't really feel like being of service to the other person because they just piss me off. I don't want to have to be honest because I don't know, it's creepy and it's weird and sometimes it's really uncomfortable. And those are all my reactions. All of my emotions are things that kind of just happen almost automatically to let you kind of think that you should not be doing the thing that you should. So how do you do that? Ready? Two words. Slow down. Slow down. So how do you slow down? That means you don't take the action that you are aching to take in the moment. Don't do it. Just take a deep breath, call a friend, do something else before I'm going to give that person a piece of my mind. I don't want to give them a piece of my mind because I know it'll piss people off and it'll do whatever. Maybe sometimes, and you have to understand, when you slow down, it's not just I'm going to prevent myself from doing a thing that is going to upset somebody. Sometimes they should be upset. If your reaction is, I don't want to, my natural state of being is I don't want to ruffle any feathers. Sometimes slowing down to come to a different conclusion is the absolute thing that you should be doing. It allows ideas of compassion and love and support and all these other great things that we've talked about to enter in safely. So how do you handle these things? How do you how do you get closer to your relationship? You can start by slowing down. We're going to talk a lot more about that idea in the near future. So anyway, there are our 5 love and relationship saviors. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been fun, and I'm going to do this again every week on Wednesday at 12 noon. Thanks so much for being here, and I will look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks so much.